Coming here to River's Edge Brewing in beautiful downtown Milford. Thanks to Ryan and the crew for inviting us back. We have let's have a big round of applause. We should have a very lively discussion tonight talking about tomorrow's Michigan presidential primary and who knows what other Michigan politics our panel will get into. Before we get started, let me just make a couple of quick announcements. Jody Westrick, our social media producer from Michigan Radio, is here, and we are live tweeting tonight's event. So if you are a Twitter person and you want to join in the conversation, you can do that. We use the hashtag #IssuesAndAle, or of course you can also just comment at Michigan Radio as well. We also have several other members of the Michigan Radio staff here. Bob Scahn is our chief engineer. He's running audio tonight. We are also live streaming tonight's event, and handling that for us is Mark Brush and Tony Brown from Michigan Radio. So we'll have video online for tonight's event. And certainly last but not least from Michigan Radio, my boss, our director of broadcasting, Steve Schramm, is here as well. And also joining us tonight is a very good friend of Michigan Radio. Mickey Maynard is a producer with Here and Now. You may know that Here and Now is in Michigan for a couple days. Yesterday and today they're broadcasting live for the Michigan primary, and they're broadcasting from our studios, and we're thrilled to have Mickey here as well. So Mickey Maynard. So as I mentioned, we're not only streaming tonight's event, we are recording the audio also. So when we get to the Q&A portion, we're going to ask you to raise your hand. I'm going to come around the room with a wireless microphone because we want, first off, everyone in the room to be able to hear what your questions are, but that way it's also recorded for posterity as well. So when we do that, please just raise your hand and we'll come by. So without further ado, let's get started. Our host tonight is Zoe Clark. You know Zoe as the co-host of It's Just Politics on Michigan Radio. Zoe is also Michigan Radio's interim program director, and we're thrilled to have her as your host tonight. Here's Zoe.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Well, it is just me, not my partner in crime also. Rick Pluta wanted to be here this evening, and the man has the flu. He may be watching on video stream, so we can all be like, hi, Rick, if you're watching, poor thing. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. What I want to do is let our panelists introduce themselves. When I introduce folks, I don't know, it just feels like you're just reading this laundry list, and I would love to just hear how the three folks to my right, physically, not politically speaking, of course, might introduce themselves. So let's do it too for fun, just like in a tweet. So 140 characters. How would you describe who you are in Michigan and why anyone should listen to you talk about politics tonight? Jake Neer.
Who's counting my characters here?
Jody, our social media director.
So I'm what you get instead of Rick Pluta today. I'm Rick Pluta's Lansing lackey. I'm Jake Neer. I'm the I'm the state capitol reporter for the Michigan Public Radio Network.
And Jake's been doing that for 4 years, so you hear his reports on Michigan Radio and is going to offer a lot of analysis about what's happening in Lansing. And then to Jake's right is Susan Demas.
I am the editor and publisher of Inside Michigan Politics, and I'm also a columnist for several publications, also about politics.
And you can also hear, so I love how I told you guys 140 characters, and then I'm going to just fill it in. And then Susan Demas, who you can also hear on Michigan Radio, offering her political insights, also on Off the Record, and is published all over the place. A really, really, really insightful political mind. And then to her right, some guy that, I think you two know each other, right? You go kind of?
I'm her husband.
True story, true story.
My name's Joe DeSano. I'm a Democratic political consultant.
Yeah.
140 characters.
I did. I totally said that.
That was
I
good.
totally said that. So we're super excited to have everyone. So I started out as an intern at Michigan Radio 10 years ago, and I have learned a lot. But I think the most important thing I've learned came from Jack Lessenberry, who I was an intern for. It started at Michigan Radio, and that was as no one really wants to hear you talk. They want to ask questions. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start out, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on. But I think everyone's here because they want to hear each other. You've got questions to ask because something big is happening tomorrow, allegedly, apparently. So I think let's jump in right at the debates. Tomorrow night is Michigan's primary. Tomorrow is the primary. Tomorrow night is when we have the results, which is what we, of course, really care about. And so we've seen the candidates crisscrossing Michigan. There was the Republican debate Thursday night. How many folks watched that debate? Let's just like start trying to get a temperature check here. Oh, okay. And then there was the Democratic debate last night in Flint. How many folks watched that comparatively? So what do you think? About half and half? Although when you actually look at the Nielsen numbers, far and away more people have watched the Fox debate. And I don't know if that's because people want to talk about the size of their hands, but Jake, you watched both debates. What was your takeaway?
Well, first, before we get into the issues,
We're talking issues? I thought
Well,
we're just-
I just
You
wanted
never
to-
talk about issues the day before an election.
Right, we talk about the horse race and the polls.
Right. Since I was a last-minute add to this, though, I want to make sure that I know the rules. Since we're talking about the campaigns here, if people start protesting us, can we kick them out?
No, we order them another beer. It makes
Oh.
things way more fun.
Okay. Well, if it does happen, everyone just make sure you chant USA, USA. Okay. I thought that obviously there was a difference in the tone of the discussion. The Republicans, there was a lot more back and forth, a lot of personal jabs being thrown, whereas in the Democratic debate, it was still contentious, but it was definitely more focused on the issues and more substantive, discussion.
Did it feel like the grown-ups were talking last night as opposed to, I mean, not that they weren't grown-ups, but Susan, help me understand sort of the sense of Thursday night comparatively to last night.
Well, it's funny. I was going through the transcripts of both of them today for something I was writing. And, if you look at the transcripts, there were a lot of substantive issues discussed at both debates, a lot of Michigan issues, which is great for us here. But nobody remembers any of that out of Thursday night. It was all about Donald Trump's manhood, and that drowned everything out. Those debates have kind of had a circus-like atmosphere. Yesterday, I think that people actually do remember the exchange over the auto bailout, the trade, exchange, some of the issues. And
There was a pretty big exchange about guns that I think people
Yeah.
are going to remember.
Yeah.
I mean, there was substantive stuff talked about.
I'm interested in this idea about the auto bailout because I think the news media, particularly here in Michigan, made a huge deal about the auto bailout. I would love to get a temperature check. How many people really felt that who watched it and heard what we're talking about, and this was the fact that Hillary Clinton took on Bernie Sanders over his vote for the auto bailout, which we can jump in a little bit in more detail about whether or not that was a accurate statement. But how many people would today, let's say you were undecided, would make your vote change depending on how a candidate voted for the auto bailout? Hands in here. So not as large as I think the media initially made it out in Michigan, which was this is going to be the be-all, end-all for Sanders saying.
How many people here work for the auto industry? Okay.
Yeah.
I think you have your answer.
But isn't that telling in itself?
But if you go to Macomb County, which, would be fun for
There are no silver bullets in elections anymore. There's mini silver bullets.
Yeah.
And that is a huge issue to a lot of folks who are going to vote in the Democratic primary tomorrow. So to the world at large, not a big issue.
Yeah.
To a small segment of the electorate, the number one issue. And the real problem here is if you watch Bernie Sanders, he didn't see this coming.
Well, so that's what I brought up. Actually, we were talking about this earlier in a political interview today on Here and Now on Mickey's show. And what I was saying I thought was just so adept was that it almost looked like Bernie Sanders had no idea what Hillary was talking about. When Clinton said, he voted against, did you see it? He was like, he looked almost dumbfounded. How amazing was this of the campaign to hold off until this moment? And that was obviously calculated.
Well, this was a calculated move by the Clinton campaign. They've been holding this for months. Okay?
So how did the Sanders campaign not think that in Michigan, in a debate in Flint, the auto bailout might come up?
Well, because the campaign is not ready for prime time, and neither is their candidate.
Let me suggest something else. So,
Oh, Joe DeSanto gets the
Bring
first
it
boo of
on.
the night. Here's the thing, boos only make that one stronger. Did you see his like level of like spinach Popeye? It's just.
I want to
keep
say,
going. You haven't seen anything yet from him.
I did cover a Bernie Sanders rally in Ypsilanti, and it is very clear that a lot of the people working on his campaign are young. This might be their first campaign that they're working on, and I don't think that they were expecting this kind of success. And I think that, no, it's true.
But listen to what you just said. I don't think they were expecting this kind of success. Is that a way to run a presidential campaign?
No, it's not a way to run a presidential campaign, and also, it's not a way to run a West Wing.
Okay. Susan, you were trying to jump in?
Yeah, so I was actually at the debate last night, and so I was part of a press gaggle with the DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, ahead of the debate. She kept hammering the auto bailout and hammering Republicans for it. And it was like she was just teeing it up for Clinton because, I mean, it's no secret where she ends up in this race. She's had the thumb on the scale. And so, you know, to Joe's point, I think that this was premeditated, and I think Sanders should have seen it.
Yeah. So last night at the Democratic debate, I timed it because I'm a dork and that's what I do at these things. And yes, I had a stopwatch. Actually, I didn't. It was my phone, but it was the stopwatch function on my phone. 40 minutes, actually 41 and a half minutes of that beginning of the debate was about Michigan issues. It was about Flint. It was about Detroit. It was about manufacturing. Then they spent the next 8 minutes talking about gun control, but used the horrible shooting in Kalamazoo as the jumping off point. Then they spent about 40 minutes talking about other issues, then came back to education, leapfrogging on DPS. That was last night. The Thursday night debate, Detroit Republicans, 7.5 minutes. Joe, I'm going to make you put on a different hat. If you are a Republican in Michigan, what are the things that you want to be talking about that
If
are
I want
helpful?
to, if I want to win a
If you wanted-
primary,
yes, exactly.
oh, I don't want to talk about anything of substance. I want to talk about
Then why come-
abortion. I want to talk about school prayer. I want to talk about building a wall to Mexico. I want to talk about nothing about anything that matters. I just want to keep on hammering. I want to hammer soft spots and hot buttons.
And did that happen on Thursday night?
Yeah, that's all it was. It was blood on the floor.
So the idea of having it in Detroit and the idea that possibly Republicans wanted to have it in Detroit because in their minds there could be some written success story about Governor Snyder, and what we can all agree on this table, at least financially speaking, a bankruptcy that actually worked, and we could all talk about whether or not other emergency managers, but I think we would all say economically the bankruptcy did work. That was not spotlighted at all.
It's tough to do that when you poisoned an entire city.
So what you're saying there, Joe, is that what you think is they didn't want to bring that up because there's too much tied in state government with things that aren't working right now in Michigan.
Well, I think it sums up the problem with the Snyder administration. You guys aren't people. You're data points on a spreadsheet. That's all you are to these guys.
Jake, you've covered Lansing for 4 years. You've covered the governor. Is that how you think is that how this administration, from what you've seen, looks at people?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far. I mean, I think that the governor has repeatedly said that he is interested in making sure that he's solving problems here, and I think, you know, there's something to be said, and there are definitely some fair criticisms about the way that the Snyder administration, the philosophy that they take toward governance, that it's all about you know, making sure that you're hitting certain points. He you know, a lot of people criticize him for not vetoing certain bills that the Republican legislature sends him, and the reason for that is because it seems to me they're not on his list. They're not things that he is all that concerned about. So if they're far right-wing type things, if it's not on his list, why not? You know, I'm going to sign the bill. It's okay, you know.
The governor was not at the Republican debate, though, Thursday night. Why not, Susan?
Yeah, this is the opportunity for a governor to be out there front and center, to be selling the state, to be wooing companies to come, especially with Detroit. You do have a comeback story to sell, but when you have a crisis like Flint and it just keeps getting worse every day, you have a crippled governor who cannot do that. And so Governor Snyder has been nowhere in the news. You saw his lieutenant governor pop up a little bit. He's endorsed John Kasich. Maybe he's the proxy, but it's a real lost opportunity for the governor and probably for Michigan as a whole.
But why does the story keep on getting worse every day? Because they have to be forced almost at gunpoint to reveal each new detail. There's no transparency at the front end of the process. It's constantly dumping stuff on reporters on Friday afternoon.
But why is then, if you have a Republican governor at a debate that 3 months ago everyone was saying we're looking for his endorsement, and now he's not there, it's because he's under pressure? Does that not become the narrative then that folks want?
You see, I think living in Michigan, you're getting a front row seat to the end of Western civilization. I mean, seriously, all the issues that you
People
brought up.
are really nodding their head. How much is there a sense in this room right now that what we're seeing right now, maybe not the end of Western civilization, but is scary? Are
Okay,
you
a
scared?
little
Wait,
bit of
just like,
hyperbole.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, how many people are like freaked out right now?
But look, all the issues you talked about that got brought up last night in that debate.
Yeah.
The auto bailout. What's that really about? Globalization, trade, the transformation of an entire economy. Guns, people getting blown away in the streets. That's, whether we can have a conversation about the Second Amendment or not, that is a barbarous act.
But Joe, help me understand, and Jake and Susan jump in. Isn't every election every 4 years the most important election of our time?
That's the rhetoric.
Yes.
So at what point are you not crying wolf, and at what point are you seeing the signs and feeling like, oh no, this one really is? I mean, help me understand, and I'm playing a little bit devil's advocate here, because I certainly think every election is important, but help me understand for an average person who has heard that rhetoric, let's say they've been voting now for 6 elections, every time this is the most important election of your lifetime, and they're hearing that now, why?
Well, I would suggest that when the Republican frontrunner at one of his rallies, his supporters are photographed going like this, that it's a different kind of election.
Some context for that, by the way. I just saw this today.
Nuremberg.
Not. Well, Donald Trump, maybe not so understanding of what he was doing, was asking people in the crowd to take a pledge that they would come out and vote for him. I believe in, what was it, Florida? And so everyone raised their hand. Raise your right hand. I pledge to vote for Donald Trump and get out to the polls.
Well, there's
That's what
also an
happened.
additional context to that. All the other racist crap he spewed during this course of the campaign. I mean, if I listen to Donald Trump, the Mexicans are bad, the blacks are bad, the Indians are bad, the
Joe?
Muslims are bad, the Klan, I don't really know.
Joe, that is absolutely what he is saying. Okay, and we are in our lovely state of Michigan that we all dearly love, where Donald Trump is going to win our primary tomorrow. So what is going on then? I mean, I can't still wrap my hand around this disconnect where there are plenty of people that are saying what he is doing is bad, 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 but he is winning.
I think that he has tapped into a lot of anger on the Republican side. And I think he has revealed that the conservative agenda has no clothes, because he's not a doctrinaire conservative. His economic agenda relies heavily on protecting Social Security and Medicare. He's not out to cut those things. He's not out there talking about tax cuts for the rich ad nauseum. No, he's talking about building a wall and banning Muslims and bringing jobs back from Mexico at gunpoint. And so I think that's very appealing to a segment of the population. This is angry populism with racial resentment, and it's really drowning out like the happier, sunnier version from socialist Bernie Sanders.
But go.
There's a difference, though. Sanders has much of the same populist rhetoric. The difference in my mind is Trump is actually an aspirational character. I mean, he'll tell you how great he is, how rich he is, and the subtext is, you can be too.
But this is an interesting point, and one, Susan, I think maybe we were talking about this a couple weeks ago and off the record. How much do you think there is a sense that, okay, let's like put the policy away just a little bit, but is there a similarity right now about the folks that you see at these giant rallies for Sanders and the folks that you see at these giant rallies for Trump that is, as you say, feeling like it's anti-establishment and that government isn't working for them? And can you blame people for feeling that way?
I mean, I think that that feeling is similar. I think the makeup of the audiences couldn't be more different. Sanders is appealing to millennials and college kids primarily, and affluent, educated professionals in suburbs. That's his base. These are people who feel like the promise of Obama did not go far enough. They need to get rid of Citizens United. They need a revolution. For Donald Trump, these are people who've been left behind in the economy. These are people who feel like everything has been a lie. They get screwed at every turn, and Donald Trump is their last best hope.
So, Joe, from the political analyst standpoint, why is it that the establishment candidates' campaigns didn't see that wave of anger coming and tap into it? Why didn't Rubio's campaign realize that's what was happening? Why didn't Clinton's campaign realize that's what's happening and start to have their candidates tailor to that message of anger, if that's what's sexy and that's what seems to be working?
I think Clinton has tried to take some of that rhetoric. And I think as we go forward, as Sanders goes to the wayside, she's going to take that even more. I think on the other side is the donors who fund those campaigns, their heads would explode if you have a Republican talking about income equality. It's just the way it's going to be.
So let's take a break here because the four of us could continue to talk forever and ever, and let's open it up to some questions. How about? Because that's my favorite part of the evening. So you want to just do hands, Steve? Raise a hands. I've got one over here. And if you'll say your name, like just even your first name is fine. How about you say where you're from?
Hi, my name is Greg, and I'm from Milford. And
Hi, Greg.
I'm not a particular Trump fan, but I like to push back against narratives. What evidence have you had that Trump has said anything about African Americans?
Oh, he has retweeted neo-Nazis quite frequently. He has thrown out protesters from Black Lives Matter.
Well, so did Hillary.
Not by their necks.
No. He didn't repudiate the Klan or David Duke.
Yeah, okay, that's fair, thanks.
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure.
Can I do a follow-up, which is, I mean, I think I love the fact that you're like out here asking this question about Trump, who does seem like such a divisive character. Have you figured out, you don't have to say who you're going to vote for tomorrow?
Well, I'm voting in the Republican primary, and whoever is leading in the polls behind the leader so that he gets fewer delegates.
Are you a hashtag Never Trump guy?
It's too soon to say.
Okay, but okay.
I may never Hillary hashtag.
Okay.
I'm voting for Trump tomorrow.
Do Joe DeSano explain before we go to the next
Please
question?
do.
I think he's going to be a disaster for Republicans up and down the ticket.
So you're doing the, what was it, the 2012 vote for Santorum?
Yeah.
He headed that.
Yeah, I know this is that's why I bring it up. Do you want to remind folks of 2012 and what you did there?
I organized Democrats to cross over into the Republican primary to vote for Santorum to some effect.
Yeah. There's,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Can
Jake.
we talk about that that phenomenon about, because this is something that I don't know a lot of people are talking about right now, what Trump could mean down ballot for Republicans.
Please bring that up, because that is something that I had on my mental list of this idea that a lot of folks, we're talking about congressional delegations and state party races, are quite concerned among Republicans if Trump was the head. Explain what the thinking there is.
Well, I mean, again, it's based on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based on a lot
I
of
believe they will.
polling and what a lot of people expect to happen if Trump is at the top of the ticket, that we could see just a disaster for Republicans all the way down, because he'll be polling so badly, he'll be losing people coming to the polls for the Republican Party. I'm not convinced. I'd like to hear what everyone else would think about that. Do you think that establishment Republicans would actually stay home? Do you think it would be that disastrous for the Republicans?
What we're talking about is the Goldwater effect of '64, which wiped everybody out. And I'm not convinced it's that cut and dried. He might bring new voters into the process. He might put new states at play. I think it's an extremely volatile election. I would not be shocked to see a blowout on either side. I wouldn't be shocked to see another Bush versus Gore scenario. Look, I'm a pundit. I am paid to be wrong, and I can tell you who's going to win tomorrow, but I can't tell you who's going to win in November.
Who is going to win tomorrow, Susan?
Clinton and Trump.
Joe? Clinton and Trump? Is that your
Yeah,
guys?
Clinton and Trump.
Jake,
There's no
Clinton, Trump?
doubt.
Yeah, I agree. Although I think the biggest thing right now, John Kasich has shown, I think, in this primary process so far, that when he puts in the work in one state, when he focuses on a state very hard, that he gets results. I'm not saying, I don't think he can get more votes than Trump, but I think he can possibly come in second tomorrow.
And we can all argue that Kasich pretty much has to come in second
Yeah.
tomorrow. A second place is basically a win for Team Kasich. And then the idea is that will help work into momentum in his home state next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, in Iowa, which is a winner-take-all state that he basically...
Ohio.
What did I just say?
Iowa.
Oh, gosh, sorry. Ohio. Thank you. Ohio, which is a winner-take-all state, which basically he's got to win moving forward. Yeah. Okay. Let's
Yeah,
open up...
but just a note.
Yeah.
I mean, even if he places second and wins Ohio, it's still going to be very difficult for him to win outright. I mean,
Absolutely.
he can block Trump, but that's about it.
Yeah.
He's counting on a brokered convention, even though it wouldn't really be brokered, right? I mean, there's no
Contested.
contested convention. Yeah.
One more comment about down ballot stuff. I mean, what will happen if Trump is the nominee is every Republican candidate for office in the state will be hammered, or in the nation, excuse me, will be hammered with the question, do you stand with Trump? And then the old guilt by association comes into play. And I feel okay about it because this guilt by association is the Klan.
Yeah.
So, I'm comfortable with it.
So I am looking on my phone because, again, poor Rick Pluta, who apparently needs to play armchair producer and who is watching, and this is just
Hi, Rick.
killing him. Hi, Rick. Okay, he wanted to send the final PPP polling results that just came out tonight. So we've got Trump at 40.89%, because we're going to be that specific. We've got Cruz at 23.26.
Oh, wow.
Kasich at 23.04.
Wow.
Rubio at 8.34.
Wow.
And undecided at 4.47.
Now, I'm interested in a little context here. I think people
Okay.
on stage here might know better than I do. 4% undecided. That's really low, isn't it? This even for this close to an election.
You would think somewhere 10 to 15% going into
I was
election day.
absolutely going to say I would have thought it would have been double digits, that 5%. But let's say even half of that 5%, because Kasich has been working his tail off the past 2 days. If he picked that up and that results were correct, he would then be above Cruz, and it would be a Trump Kasich.
And Cruz has invested a lot of resources, both financial and human, in the state for a long, long time.
Yeah, but he hasn't been here.
That's
He's
true.
coming here tonight.
Right, he's
Yeah.
coming here tonight.
He's
Grand
coming to Milford?
Rapids. Yeah.
He's gonna be here.
No, what Cruz has done is he's invested in the ground game, and that has paid off in a lot of states. Now,
Yeah.
Michigan is not Kansas. It's not a closed caucus,
Thank
but
God.
he has some good field staff who's working. The key number for everybody to remember tomorrow night is 15%.
Right.
If candidates do not get above 15% in either primary, that shouldn't be a problem on the Democratic side with only 2 candidates. But on the Republican side, right now it's looking like Marco Rubio might not get any delegates.
Wow.
But he stays in through Florida.
Right, although you're starting to hear the drumbeat of him dropping out.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
The boy wonder can drop out and star in the next Batman movie as Robin.
Okay. Yeah.
How far do you go? Hi, I'm Lou. I live here in Milford.
Hi, Lou.
So the thing that might be different between Bush versus Gore would be there's only 4 and 4 now. There's not a there's a divided.
I'm not predicting
evenly.
Supreme Court,
Yeah.
but that would be fun.
That's
I was
where
going to say,
it's
but for
decided.
political junkies, can you imagine?
The second thing is I've been to Vermont a lot, and Bernie Sanders got a pretty nice state there.
Wait, say that
we'd
again?
do well to emulate that in this country.
Oh, you said, and Bernie Sanders has a good state there, is
Yeah.
what you said.
Yeah.
But
They
he's,
have a- They
that,
have a very nice state.
and agreed, but I mean, would you blame whether Michigan is good or bad on either Debbie Stabenow or Gary Peters?
Well, he was mayor of Burlington before he was a senator.
So Kwame Kilpatrick then is to blame for Michigan?
Well,
I'm pushing back a
I'm-
little just because it's fun, and
I'm-
I'm just,
I'm going to push and say that, you
Yeah.
know, our Supreme Court,
yeah,
our executive branch, and our legislative branch are all
Yeah.
controlled by one party.
agreed.
Yet somehow
That is not
Flint was
good.
Flint was
Just
res-
let- just-
responsible. Democrats were responsible for Flint.
We have an executive branch, a legislative branch,
Yeah.
and a judicial branch that are all
So
controlled by one party.
talk to me,
And the poisoning occurred under their watch. So
let's get back to Bernie Sanders in Vermont, which you've traveled a lot. So if you don't mind asking, will you be a Bernie supporter tomorrow?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I am.
So what are those elements when you know are driving from Michigan and you get to Vermont that you're going, this is why this man needs to be president?
Well, you know, I think because of the way they deal with people on a more individual basis, it is not a very corporate look at society. Vermont, actually, the first time I went there,
Uh-oh. Did we just? Yeah. The mic is not a Bernie Sanders fan.
And-
Let's
and-
just put that out there.
and at that time, the state of Vermont declared the family farm as an endangered species. And it's protected under Constitution in the state of Vermont. You don't see that here in the state of Michigan. Factory farms are protected under the Constitution of Michigan. There's a huge difference, and I would rather be governed by somebody that has that mindset than the current Republican Party.
Got it.
Because we,
Thanks, Lou. Thank you. Happy voting tomorrow. Okay. Who else? Let's keep going. Oh, yeah, yeah. There's one right here.
Okay, where? Oh, right here.
One of the best articles I've written about read about the Trump phenomenon came from Timothy Egan in March 4th's New York Times. And basically he said that the Trump voter, they're sick of tolerance. In Super Tuesday exit polls, they dominated with people that said, he tells it like it is. Susan,
Yes.
tolerance.
Yes. What about it?
What's wrong with Bill Ballinger?
What's wrong with Bill Ballinger? I have lots of tolerance.
Put it in context.
Yeah. So I'm the editor and publisher of Inside Michigan Politics. I have been since October of 2013. Bill Ballinger, who's a former Republican lawmaker, used to own the publication, sold it to me, and I think we were both happy with, I got a good product, he got a lot of money. And Bill stayed on with me, and it worked out pretty well for a while. Until he broke a cardinal rule of journalism, which is making stuff up. So I don't really have a problem with him having opinions. If anybody has read me, I've got more than anybody in this room.
I'm married to her. I can tell you, she's got more opinions than all you guys put together.
But as a journalist, I don't have tolerance for people who don't adhere to facts. So that's why we had to part ways.
But you know what? Let's let him know what the facts were that he thought he had.
Bill went on the radio and he went on off the record representing my company. And he repeatedly said that the problem in Flint was not bad. He said that he spoke with the higher ups at Hurley Hospital who assured him that there was really no problem with lead. Then he had to backtrack because that was not true. He did say that his own pipes were okay. Perhaps they are. Other people's, not so much. But he repeatedly said that children are not suffering, and this is being blown way out of proportion, and the medical science does not jive with that.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, let's move on to more primary details. Steve, we've got another question over here.
Hi, I'm Tom Bald. I do not live in Milford.
Hi, Tom.
I live closer to Milan,
Okay.
and I'm delighted to be here. This is
Thanks
exciting.
for coming out tonight.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here. I work for the VA, And I'm
The
proud
VA?
of it. The VA.
Okay, Veterans Affairs.
Administration. Yep. I work at the National Center for Patient Safety in Ann Arbor. I have two questions, but I think I'll ask the one first. How can we work for impeaching Snyder or getting him arrested?
Is there a second part?
The second part's not related to that, but it's about Trump. How can you explain how the evangelical community can support Donald Trump?
So let's start. Let's go in order. The first question, and Jake, I'm going to toss this to you because you've been at quite a few
Yay.
of the Board of State Canvassers meetings,
Yes.
and that's the group that okays ballot language.
Let's start with that question.
Let's.
Well, I can't. I actually am a little bit embarrassed to say that I don't know exactly what impeaching, if that even exists on the state level.
I don't even think there's a mechanism to impeach him.
But there is a mechanism to recall a governor. The State Board of Canvassers at this point has approved 2 recall petitions, and they would have to be after Right to Work passed in 2012. The legislature and the governor approved much tougher processes for recalling public officials. And at this point, you would have to collect something close to 800,000 signatures, and I think it's a month, to try
It's
to...
793,000 signatures,
Yeah.
give
Wow.
or take a few, in 60 days.
60
And
days.
a $4 million budget.
Yeah, no, this is a very, 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 and I could go on all night, high bar to recall a politician. It's, for a little context, there are a lot of campaigns trying to put something, just a petition-initiated law is what we call it in Michigan, on the ballot in 2016. And you need, I believe, something like 240,000 signatures to put those on, and you have several months to get those petitions on the ballot, to get that on the ballot. Almost every group that I've been following has been failing miserably at that. And that is a much lower bar.
And let's be very clear. The reason that bar is so high, because that's how they want it to be.
Yeah.
This was to
In
make this
2013, they essentially made themselves recall proof.
and remind us why, Joe DeSano? Because of what controversial law did they
I
use
said
that
this.
as?
The EM law and right to work.
No, the
Yes.
right to work. That right after right to work, Republicans in the legislature decided we need to make these laws just a little tougher. And who signed that into law? One Governor Snyder. Yeah. Yeah. Mickey.
I just happened to look this up on my phone. My parents helped write the 1963 Michigan Constitution.
Wow.
Yay, yay, Mom and Dad, thank you. So there is an article in there calling for the impeachment of civil officers. There will be 3 members of the House of Representatives appointed to run the impeachment.
Who will appoint them?
Let's see. The
The speaker.
So Kevin Cotter is totally.
Yeah, so essentially there's no way
So basically,
that anyone's being
there's
impeached.
no way.
This
But
will be
we're-
over faster
we're-
than
we're-
the Courser Gamrat hearing.
We're someone to appoint an impeachment panel. It would go to the House first, then to the Senate, and what is this?
I learned something tonight.
Yeah. Let's see. The Senate would be required to hold trials, pretty much like the federal process.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
No, this is really helpful. So basically, I think what we can say is it's not going to happen
Yeah.
because, as Lou was explaining earlier, we of course have a Republican majority in both the House, a super majority as it's called in the state Senate. But gosh, if there was a Democratic House, how interesting would that have been?
We should say that the top Democrat in the House has called for Snyder to resign at this point.
Yes.
And there's a possibility he could be the speaker, after the election this year. I'm not saying it's likely,
Right.
but there's a chance. Which means, what is the relationship
Right.
between the governor and the speaker at that point?
I would would love to pick your brain on this, Susan and Joe. Tim Greimel, the Democratic leader of the State House, calls on Governor Snyder to resign. Let's dig into this politically. Sure, you're a Democrat. It makes good headlines. You're a Democratic leader in the state, and you are the first to call on Governor Snyder to resign. But let's go a little deeper, which is, why would Democrats ever want this governor to resign if you're thinking about it from a pure political calculus, which is you keep this guy in office for the next 2 years as a lame duck?
Oh, you turn him into a human piñata.
Right. And every day it's new stories. Why would you ever do that? So what was behind Tim Greimel's thinking politically?
Honestly, I'm not sure there was a lot of political calculation other than maybe just blind anger. I mean, keep in mind, all the legislative leaders in Lansing don't like this guy. The governor holds everyone in political office with disdain. You are beneath him, okay? And he was probably speaking out of anger. From a political perspective, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I salivate at the idea of running campaigns with Trump and Snyder and kicking the hell out of Republicans.
Do you think that Senate Majority Leader Arlen Meekoff holds the governor in disdain?
I think it's more of a situation where the governor holds Meekoff in disdain as being some kind of doofus farmer.
But doesn't this then go into the narrative that this governor came from the CEO background, the idea that a lot of voters like the idea of an outsider candidate.
Yeah.
But then you get in office and you realize, well, maybe they don't like to play the game, and maybe those personal relationships.
We're
don't mean
citizens.
much.
We're not shareholders. And hopefully, the end result of the Snyder years is we're going to take this idea that you can run government like a business out in the back, and you're going to put 2 bullets in the back of its head.
Although
You cannot run a government like a business.
Although I will say this, and unfortunately, Matt Marsden, a Republican political consultant who couldn't be here tonight at the last minute, couldn't show up. I think what he would argue is you can have those feelings and yet look at the unemployment rate in Michigan under this governor. That there are benchmarks.
I would
that
say
think
it
we
had a
all-
lot more to do with the auto bailout. I mean, I count 81 jobs the governor's created. They're in Flint passing out water.
Well, look, I'm a business owner, so no, I think it's clear that he has improved the business climate here. I'm a small business owner, so I haven't gotten any tax breaks for moving my office or anything, although, maybe there's hope. But I think that for a certain class of citizen, he has improved things. He's cut taxes quite a bit for businesses. Some of them have hired people, which is good. But, that's not all there is to an economy or to running a state.
And I get that there is that anger towards the governor, and I think in 2014 it was boiling even at that point after right to work and some other issues, and yet he won re-election in a pretty blue state.
Yeah, I think part of the issue, frankly, was, the Democrats took a long time to find a candidate. Mark Schauer was a congressman from Battle Creek, not a real population base, good retail politician, but it's hard to run a statewide race with retail politics. He came within 4 points, which is admirable, but maybe with a stronger candidate, maybe somebody who got in earlier and took advantage of weaknesses, maybe it would have turned out differently. But, this was not a resounding result. If you look at the numbers, and you got to go by the numbers, sure, Republicans won everything very handily. The governor, every statewide office, the House, the Senate by a supermajority of 27 to 11. That's incredible. But in terms of vote totals, Democrats actually did better overall when you look at Congress and the House. For the Senate, the Republicans won a little bit. So not an overwhelming victory, good tactics because it produced a very good result for Republicans.
Okay, let's open it up to more questions. Yeah, got some back there.
Hi, my name is Nikki. I'm from Waterford.
Hi, Nikki.
And I'm just wondering, what good will it do to impeach Snyder when we're not even really, trying to go after the people who were there on the ground, who were specifically in charge of Flint? In my eyes, Governor Governor Snyder is in charge of a whole state where you have people like the emergency manager, Flint, who isn't really facing too much, and not to mention the EPA and the people who were working for the EPA at the time. They weren't even there for the hearing that the Senate had just a few weeks ago. So I'm curious, what is happening to those people who are more key players on the ground?
Well, one of them, Darnell Early, is getting, what, $83,000
Yeah,
a
he's
month?
getting paid $83,000 to take a walk from his job as the emergency manager of the Detroit Public Schools.
Yeah,
Imagine that on your resume, Flint and the DPS.
Well, that was part of his agreement when he took the job, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying that I mean, I don't like it, but I'm saying it's part of his contract.
But let's talk about that argument about that, right now, Governor Snyder, he is absolutely the figurehead because he is the governor of Michigan. But the fact that there were quite a few people who were in charge, and isn't that some of what the confusion has been laid? Because there were so many different levels that really, when it all came and happened and his emails started to get out, fingers were being pointed everywhere else.
Right. That goes to the fact that two things are going on. One, we've got rolling disclosure, and two, we've got no transparency.
We are in the beginning of Sunshine Week, Jake. This is the idea where the media takes a week and we actually do advocate for something. Folks may know here in Michigan that we tend to get graded F or in the bottom states when it comes to government transparency.
Or the very bottom, the
we-
bottom-most state.
Which we were. And some of this is because right now there aren't FOIA laws that are open to the governor's office or to state lawmakers. In fact, we are one of only 2 states in the country where the governor and the legislative branch don't have to open emails. Do you think that Flint wouldn't have happened, though, had there been more transparency?
Oh, man.
Or was it a failure of a lot of levels of bureaucracy?
I mean, it's very hard for me to tell exactly what would have happened if things were open. I mean, the question is, if you change the law, for one thing, how much information do you get with all the exemptions that there are and so forth? But I can't say exactly what would have happened if the governor's office and the legislature were open to FOIA.
We would have a better idea of what did happen.
Yes, that is true. I could say that for sure.
There was that email, the Detroit Free Press published it from one of the higher ups at DEQ, one of the higher ups in Snyder's office saying, I'm not copying DEQ for FOIA reasons. I mean, these people know how to work the law and they know how to work it to their advantage, and sometimes to their advantage has very harmful effects for the rest of us.
One of my favorite things in politics, and this is such a sad thing to say it's one of my favorites, is but when you see a party in the minority push for something and then they get into the majority and suddenly they are against it. And I think you probably know I am talking about Lieutenant Governor Brian Kelly, Republican minority, vigorously pushed for new FOIA laws, for open government laws, so that
And Governor Granholm was.
so that Governor
in power.
Jennifer Granholm would have to open it. Now we have Lieutenant Governor Brian Kelly in power, all Republicans. Is he now wishing that he had taken that back? Although we are starting to hear some talk that maybe he will jump back into the idea.
I don't know how much power the lieutenant governor has over an administration's agenda. I'm not so sure that Brian Kelly actually has the power to say, let's open FOIA up to the governor's office, and then the governor's just say, okay, why not? I don't think so. I will note, though, that during Sunshine Week, we will see a bipartisan bill in the State House to open FOIA to the legislature and the governor's office. Representative Ed McBroom, who's a Republican from the UP, is going to be sponsoring that, although he has also said that he supports this for a very, very long time. And I have a very strong feeling it won't go very far.
Okay, Susan, will it go anywhere?
No, but it's nice and symbolic.
Joe, will it go anywhere?
Trash bin.
Okay, yeah, Steve.
Yeah, my name's Jeff McDavid. I live here in Milford.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello. I was going to ask a question about Bill Schuette and Maddie Maroon, but because tomorrow's the primary, I thought I'd turn it back toward the voting tomorrow. And I'm kind of surprised. I'm old enough to remember when President Nixon left office because of lying about the Watergate stuff. And I'm old enough to remember Bill Clinton, pardon me, the press dissecting everything he said about the Monica Lewinsky. So how come Donald Trump can say anything and the press just moves on? Is this just because the news cycle, the networks are so happy with the ratings that they don't follow up on the thousands of people cheering when the trade towers came down, when he got hundreds of emails, which he didn't? I'm a retired military officer, and this really concerns me that this guy could conceivably be the next commander-in-chief. Where's the press?
I think that's a really fair question, and one that I think a lot of folks are, yeah. This is the answer that I've started to hear as I think folks in the media are starting to look at themselves and ourselves about how Trump has been and continues to be covered. And I think the thought was he's never actually going to make it. That what I kept hearing is something's going to happen. And Ezra Klein, formerly of the Washington Post, who now writes for Vox, wrote this wonderful, elegant column maybe 2 or 3 months ago where he said, Donald Trump will not be the nominee because something is going to happen, ... And he really did say, because something is going to happen. And we in the media collectively thought, eventually it's going to end. Eventually he is going to get too far. Eventually voters are going to just wipe their hands clean. And then that didn't happen. And then I would say, maybe 8 weeks ago, there was kind of this light bulb that went off where folks started going, oh, this could actually happen. And then
when people started to vote.
Well, that was exactly it, because everyone said, well, wait till Iowa. We'll wait till New Hampshire.
It started, hey, he trashed John McCain, he's done. He went after Megyn Kelly and said those horrible things about her. There's so many incidences where the intelligentsia said that he was going to be done, and he never was done.
Well, is that thing that was going to happen, that the Republican establishment was going to do something? Because what I've heard is that, political scientists were saying, based on everything we know about the electoral process, that Donald Trump cannot be the nominee. But part of that calculus was that the establishment of the Republican Party was going to step in at some point and do something to try to win support away from Donald Trump, and that never happened because did they just sit back and say, oh, the political scientists are saying it can't happen, so what do we do?
So it was almost this echo, this loop, this narrative, it's not going to happen, don't worry too much because eventually it's going to die down, and it didn't?
I don't want to let us in the media off the hook. I think
Right.
we have sucked. And no, I think so. This is why I'm not very coordinated. But I'll finish from here. Now I'm going to explain. See, heels and stools and short people do not mix. Okay. So
No
here's the-
journalist should
That's
have to
why-
apologize when she's going to continue like that.
Okay.
That's why I didn't wear heels tonight.
I did yoga
still early.
earlier this morning, so I'm good. Okay, so here's the deal. And I'm going to let the print people off the hook a little bit, not just because I'm part of them, but because you will see very interesting treatises in the New York Times and in the New Yorker taking down Donald Trump. This is not new. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they will play any speech. They won't play Bernie Sanders, they won't play Hillary Clinton, they won't play Marco Rubio, but they will play him ad nauseum because he's great for ratings.
And also, Republican primary voters aren't coming home from work and kicking up, putting their feet on the Davenport and reading the New Yorker.
Yeah. And I was just
They're
going
just
to
trying
say
to
as much.
breathe through their mouth.
No, but when I said I was just going to say as much, I think there is a sense, though, that part of this has to do with how much do folks really want to sit around and read these in-depth articles? if the New York Times, if the Washington Post, if the Atlantic suddenly had amazing viewership and clicks, but the fact is 19.9, 20 million people watched Fox's debate on Thursday night. You know, you can't argue with what people want. And when we are in a for-profit media environment, people are going to give the people what they want.
Yes, I do think we have a responsibility, and I think we've failed.
Which is why you should support nonprofits like Michigan Radio. Yes, continue.
Well played. Well played.
Oh, yeah.
I am Brian from Milford,
Hi, Brian.
and I am not a huge political junkie, so I need a little bit of basic education.
Let's do it.
Favorability ratings.
Okay.
You probably have better data than I do, but I've seen it moderately recently. Most people don't like the Democratic Party. More people don't like the Republican Party. The only active candidate that I saw that has more favorable than unfavorable rating is Bernie Sanders. The most disliked is Trump and Hillary. How do you explain that?
Can I just ask you a question? You say you're not a political junkie, and then you ask about unfavorable ratings?
My wife is a huge
Oh, okay.
So wait,
No, I
excuse me, sir,
understand
why
that.
isn't your wife asking the question then? I want to hear from
She's
you.
mortified that I'm asking questions right now.
Let me take a stab
He's
at
doing a
answering
very
that.
good job. You should be proud.
The reason Bernie Sanders is relatively popular in comparison to other politicians is he hasn't really sustained an attack for any period of time. I mean, Hillary Clinton really hasn't stuck a shiv in his side. She hasn't really devoted much time to kicking his rear end on the TV. I think the toughest thing I've seen is a couple mailers that have come to our house, which were basic contrasts on their record on guns. That would rapidly change in a general election. A socialist would be turned into Karl Marx very, very quickly by the Republican kill machine, which have went after Hillary, went after her, our Muslim president, and Hillary Clinton for 30 years.
Let's also go into this though with favorabilities, because isn't there sort of this sense of I like this person, I adore this person, this is this person that is holding my hope and change, and yes, I'm using the Obama 08, but because those words worked, versus I'm not sure this person can win. That aren't you hearing from certain Democrats, though, Joe, who are saying, you know what, maybe my heart is with a Bernie Sanders, but I don't think he can do it. And so I've got to stand behind Clinton. And how interesting that the narrative always has been with Republicans and Democrats that that Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, think about how in this election that has so been turned on its head.
Well-
That right now Republicans are falling in love with Trump and Democrats are falling in line with Clinton.
Well, I wouldn't term it as falling in line. And as far
And
as
Joe
falling
DeStefano
in
gets
love,
the second boo of the night.
boo me, I don't care.
USA. USA.
Unless you're sending me a check or gave birth to me, I don't give a damn. It is interesting, though. We've seen a rise of the Bernie Bros. These are some
How many
interesting
people know about the hashtag Bernie Bros?
I know personally
Okay.
because my mentions on
retweeted.
Twitter are filled
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah. I mean, do we quickly want to get into, Jake, you want to explain Bernie Bros?
Oh, I don't think I want to explain Bernie Bros.
Okay. No.
I'll leave that up to someone else.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know how big of a contingent these people are. A lot of it is social media where you can create an account in a heartbeat. But I can tell you that anytime you may suggest that Bernie Sanders may not,
Walk on water?
they come out. And if you happen to mention that he told her, wait your turn yesterday at the debate, as I may have on Twitter, they don't like that very much. And they will tell you that you're the real sexist. So there are some people out there.
Let me take a temperature check.
I don't know how many.
Here's what I wonder, though, because, again, I think we sometimes get in our media bubble and we start hearing what we all think is important, which, of course, is super important. But how many folks about last night that there were a couple instances in the Democratic debate where people felt like Bernie Sanders shushed Clinton or said, you know, I'm still talking. Raise your hands if you felt like that was something that was this idea of this sort of mansplaining, for lack of better terminology.
It,
So,
it seems
I mean,
like people
look,
are worried to. I see a lot of this.
It was what, just him telling her, like, you know, yeah, let me speak. Okay. See, because I think for some in the media, it reminded them of '08 with the debates with Obama, where he looks at Hillary, remember, and she's talking, he goes, well, you're likable enough. Did it remind you guys of
Or
that?
go back to
moment at all?
2000 where Rick Lazio just tore into her. I mean, look, I don't think you treat someone you're debating on a stage like that. You'll get your turn to speak. You don't need to interject yourself.
But that's what Trump does for 2 hours
Well,
of
that's
the
because
debate.
he's Mr. Trump, and the rules don't apply to him.
I want to get a...
I want to make sure. Okay, Susan wrote a great column, by the way. Let's give Susan a round of applause. No, it was that she mentioned this, and I thought it was a great point. Is that, you know, there are people who pointed out that Hillary did this sort of similar thing to Bernie as well during the debate. The thing is that it was a visceral reaction. That when people were watching, it was just it was just the way that they reacted emotionally to the moment, and I think that that's absolutely real.
And
that
part of it
people
is
felt
the
that.
tone. It's a gruff voice. It's an older guy. And there's a lot at stake. There's a lot at play there. And I blame Bernie for this because he needs to be, if you're running for president of the United States, you need to be aware of the history of who you're talking to and what stage you're on.
Uh-oh.
Basic human
I
niceness.
am fine with booze. I'm fine, but let's language. There's kids around. Speaking of, I would like a young person to ask a question because I want to hear Angela ask her question about what she finds fascinating about politics. Angela, who years ago, when she was about that big, told me she was going to be president of the United States, folks. So you're next president of the United States.
Hi, I'm Angela Demas, and
She's a ringer.
I don't think this is more. I think this is more of a comment, but it's about Trump. Trust me, it's going to be appropriate. But it's about. I think he's more of an entertainer than he is really, a politician. And he switched sides many times before. He was an independent, and that didn't really work out for him. So he switched to a Republican, and then honestly, I don't think we actually know his opinion because he just wants more people to vote for him, and I don't think that would be a great president. So I think I'm for Hillary or Bernie. I think they're great, and yeah.
I think Donald Trump.
Jake, while you were saying that, Jake said, I want to answer this question.
I got
so
this.
nicely
No.
done.
I think Donald Trump would tell you that there is that his approach is very much centered on this entertainment value. I mean, we went to, or I went to again one of his rallies in Warren last week, and he said to the crowd after kicking someone out, a protester, that aren't Trump rallies the most fun? Because, I mean, when you go to a Trump rally, you expect certain things. You expect people to be thrown out. You expect the USA chant. You expect him to tell the cameras to turn around.
It's like professional wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but he's selling himself as, I mean, there is a certain entertainment value to it. There's no question about it.
Okay, Steve, yeah.
Hi, I'm Alexandra from
Hi,
Whitmore Lake.
Hi.
And you already kind of touched on this a little bit with the favorability ratings of Sanders and Clinton. But let's say hypothetically that Trump does make it to November. I just want some more information on what you guys think about Clinton versus Trump or Sanders versus Trump. I know you already said, they'll pull the socialist card, but what do you guys think?
I've seen the head-to-head matchups. NBC Marist just released them. Most people aren't really polling that because, you know, you have to get through the primary season yet. And Sanders is consistently doing better. I would contend that his numbers are artificially high because he hasn't had to take a punch yet. You know, Hillary Clinton, whatever you think of her, has been taking punches for decades. You know, you either like her or you don't. And you know a lot about her. With Bernie Sanders, he's still an unknown quality. So I don't know who in the end would be the stronger candidate. I have a feeling that my husband has a different opinion. But I do think that anybody who trumpets numbers, as Sanders interestingly does, isn't really going off great information.
There are definitely articles that have been written about this, especially from the perspective of Bernie Sanders actually being a better head-to-head candidate than Hillary Clinton. And the points that are made are sort of that Hillary Clinton can be easily attacked for her trade policies, these sort of things. The thing that I think is missing from some of these articles is the fact that Hillary Clinton has, you know, that these are things, this is not what's motivating Trump's supporters. Trade policy, I don't think, is why people are voting for Donald Trump. And I think it's basically the takeaway is that it's just premature at this point to say what's going to happen.
Although, isn't it dynamic to think about for what I would believe would be the first time ever in U.S. history, if it was Trump and if it was Clinton, to see two candidates on stage next to each other and knowing that one candidate had actually given money to the other candidate's political campaign.
Right.
Would we have ever seen anything like that in history before? So I want to keep moving on because we've only got a little bit more time and I'm seeing a lot of hands. So yeah.
People felt like you couldn't run for president because if you couldn't run your own family, how could you run the country? And here you have a man, Donald Trump, who's walked away from 2 families. If you give him the benefit of the doubt, saying that, well, you know, the divorces weren't his fault, it still shows he has a tremendous lack of judge of character.
Well, as somebody who's happily divorced, I'll just put that nominated for sainthood.
Well, but I think there is something to what she's saying, and I think it ties into what this gentleman said earlier about the evangelicals supporting Trump. It does seem very strange to me that someone who, you know, owns casinos, owns hotels where you can rent porn films, whose current wife you can see 3/4 naked pictures all over the internet, and somehow he's the toast of the town when it comes to the evangelical crowd. I do find that mighty hypocritical, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
Okay, let's keep going through. Where is Steve? Oh yeah.
And let me
over here,
say,
Steve.
I'm not judging it. Don't make you a bad person.
Hi, I'm Evan from Milford, and I now live in Ypsilanti. Sanders supporters as maybe like young Bernie bros or something like that, when a lot of us are really issue-oriented. It's not just people that are sharing things on social media and not thinking about it.
Sure.
People actually back this candidate, whether Joe on the left thinks he has a chance or not. There are people that are getting involved simply because Bernie Sanders is existing.
And I would agree with you completely. I think that we are actually I absolutely, as a political phenomenon, I mean, you know, tonight, right after the Fox News town hall between Hillary and Bernie, he's driving to Ann Arbor. He's going to hold a rally at Chrysler. I mean, how many people does Chrysler? I mean, there are going to be thousands of people there. How many, Ed? 12,000 is Chrysler? So don't get me wrong. When we're talking about Bernie Sanders as a political phenomenon, there is absolutely
He's
a political phenomenon.
He's not winning elections.
He is winning elections.
No, he's not.
But
he
Joe,
won 3 this weekend.
So just a second.
Whether they matter or not, he did win 3 this weekend.
Let's pretend we're an NPR show where we are kind and let everyone speak. So just a second. Bernie Sanders has won states. Hillary Clinton.
Tiny white ones.
Joe, just a second. Bernie Sanders has won states. Hillary
not
Clinton
tiny.
is winning in the delegate count. So
Yeah, I
both
know.
of you are right, and this
It's
is what is
true.
a very powerful message right now in the Democratic Party, of which this is the issue, and it reminds some people of some of the Republican fight, but there's absolutely a phenomenon among Bernie Sanders and that he has won states. And I think this sense that the establishment is sometimes stomping on what his message is, I think is fair, and I think sometimes only adds fuel to the fire of why folks support him.
Okay, well, before we get to the meanness, and it'll be good, I want to go with math. And this is where I get just as bad hate mail as he does. There's no doubt that Bernie Sanders has won states and delegates. There's also no doubt that it is almost statistically impossible for him to win the nomination. And that's not to say that your issues are not important. It's to say that not enough people like you are getting out and voting for him, because even though he has won states like New Hampshire, like Maine, turnout is not to revolution levels. And that's something that I would encourage young people to think about, in that it's great for this to be your first experience, but stay with the process if you care about it. Don't just say, my candidate didn't make it, I'm gonna go home.
That's right. If you don't like the nomination rules, which, by the way, I'm not a fan of, if you don't like the nomination rules in the Democratic Party, my advice to you is actually very simple. Get elected to be a precinct delegate, organize other delegates, overthrow the local hierarchy, and write your own goddamn rules.
Okay, yeah.
He turned out something like 8,000 or 9,000 people last week in Breslin, up in East Lansing. The precinct that Breslin's in had 0 people turn out in the August election this past.
Stop it, is that really?
Yeah, it's absolutely the truth. One of the precincts on the Michigan State campus had no one turn out. Literally, you had 3 poll workers there, but no voters.
That's an amazing fact. Okay, yeah. Hi.
Hi. Lovely village. Thinking out of the box,
Yeah, let's
a
do
what
it.
if question.
Okay.
For the Supreme Court Justice, can Obama nominate himself? In which he would resign as president, Biden would become the incumbent running as a Democratic candidate.
I'm not gonna lie, I have thought about this.
About a lot of things late at night as Josh won't go to sleep, and it's like, what if Obama? Okay, here next. I have no
I
idea.
texted Rick Pluta this exact scenario.
You guys are such dorks. It's so sweet. What are you gonna do without each other? I have no idea. That's a fabulous question. I think we should stick around after 8 o'clock and we'll do some Googling and we'll have Mickey help us because she's the researcher right now. We're gonna figure out that question because that's amazing. And I my gut says no, but
It sounds like a novel I'd like to read. The
It's
first
the next-
chapter
it's
is
the next
first
season of
chapter has
House
been
of
fabulous.
How many people have started House of Cards, by the way? Okay, yeah. Anyone actually finished it yet? No, stop.
No spoilers, please.
Yeah, I'm only on episode 2. Okay, we're coming down on time. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Sarah.
Hi,
and
Sarah.
Formerly from Ann Arbor, though, so I'm not too far away. But what I want to say, I really find myself in a quandary about this election, and that Mr. T, whatever, I have no respect for him. Bernie Sanders, I have a lot of respect for, but I think about Trump and I think about Sanders, and I think that they're both very U.S.-centric. And looking at the international community and thinking about, the effect of a president beyond our borders, I can't help but look to Clinton. And I would like you to comment on that a little bit, about the effectiveness of a president who has experience in the bigger world picture and how that might affect the selection. I feel it's been somewhat weak.
Okay. The same charge had been thrown at President Obama when he was a candidate as well. So I just wanted to make sure that,
Well, look, but you're coming at something completely different. What you're looking
True.
at is Hillary Clinton, who was a former Secretary of State and traveled to more countries than any of her predecessors. If you can picture her traveling around, that's what she wants you to see. Although, of course, I think right now, anywhere she goes, the idea of Benghazi for folks is going to be always part of that narrative. But that's what all voters are doing. I mean, isn't every single one of us all looking at the debate screens, looking at these people during interviews, and trying to picture them as the next president of the United States? And that is the image that they're trying to fit in. And so if you have a narrative of a Hillary Clinton who has traveled the world as Secretary of State, who can talk about foreign affairs. I mean, 2 debates ago, she creamed Bernie Sanders on foreign affairs. It was just the fact how it was, that domestic issues, he absolutely was talking about economic issues. But look, when you are a former Secretary of State, and let's also, as former First Lady who traveled the world too, you're gonna always have a level above in terms of knowledge and folks that you know and the deals that you put together. So I think, of course, if you're looking at Hillary, you're going to go, well, sure, she's got foreign policy experience. If you're looking at governors, they don't have as much. If you're looking at senators, sure, they go on delegation trips and things like that, but did she learn way more about foreign affairs as Secretary of State than as Senator of New York? Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Bernie cited his time as mayor of Burlington as a foreign policy experience and how he would be able to handle Putin, as an equal, considering that, an angry Black Club president is the equal to a hardcore KGB operative.
And that's fair, but I think we also have nominated presidents in the past who haven't had very tiny little minuscule bits of foreign policy experience.
Governors tend not to. George W. Bush didn't have very much. I think it's really a leadership question. It's who do you trust, who do you see in the office, and do you think that they'll pick good people to advise you?
I want to just take this opportunity, by the way, to go back to the very beginning of what we were talking about, Governor Snyder and him endorsing someone, by the way, while I'm thinking about it, because he has said that he wants a governor to be the nominee of the Republican Party. By the way, just today, he is still saying that he wants a governor to be the nominee of the GOP, but he's not endorsing anyone.
And of course, there's only one left.
There's only one left, and it's John Kasich. So I tend to think that's sort of a coded way.
Who
of saying
interestingly took a shot at the governor today, whether on purpose or by accident.
What was that?
At one of the rallies today, he made a crack to the crowd about the great roads.
What he said you need to get your roads fixed here in Michigan, is what he said. Yeah, I don't think that was a crack. That was just, accurate description.
Sure, but you'd think that he might have some understanding that his fellow Republican governor was working very hard on that issue.
Yeah. Well, and I think we can all agree that probably we thought Rick Snyder would think either Jeb Bush or Kasich would be his guys if they had gotten this far.
Or Chris Christie.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, we've got time for one more question.
So speaking of John Kasich, I'm
Yeah.
Inga, I'm from Toledo, Ohio, so I won't be voting until next week. But I had a question about turnout. You mentioned a lot, especially with Bernie in the Democratic primaries, it has been lower turnout, but the Republicans have had huge turnout. Do you think that's going to be a factor in the general election?
I think it could be.
Well, let's be clear on one fact that Hillary Clinton brought up last night, which is that she has more votes right now than Trump does. If you're actually looking at how many bodies went out to vote, Hillary's got
That's in a much less crowded field, though.
I'm just telling you the numbers, though. Yeah.
But more about 2008 versus 2016, because in 2008, there was huge turnout in the Democratic primaries.
Well, I would think that if the nominee on the Republican side is Trump or Cruz, Democrats and their core constituencies will have no problem turning out.
Susan?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think that what you hear from a lot of Democratic voters is they'd be okay with either Clinton or Sanders, so they're not as motivated to turn out. You know, there are the hardcore supporters, and you see them go at each other all the time. But I tend to think that that's part of what is feeding into this, and there's not a great correlation between primary turnout and general election turnout.
I think I want to end with this because we've got, like I said, about 90 seconds left. And this is, I would love your thoughts because this is something that I've been thinking about. Maybe not Obama, you know, nominating himself, but these are the things that I think about, which is looking ahead. And now that we have seen this Pandora's box open in 2016, at least on the Republican side, where we have seen debates, we have seen grown-ups talking to each other like things we have never seen before. And I guess my question is to the panel as we wrap up, can we ever go back? That in 4 years when we have another presidential campaign, will we look at the Trump phenomenon and things like small hands and, you know, baby Rubio and all these things. Will the name calling,
Little
and
Marco.
this was, Little Marco, thank you, you know, lying Cruz, was this going to be looked at as this odd election because Trump came in as this reality star, or are we seeing the beginning of something different in electoral politics, and have we opened this Pandora's box of just completely different elections for entertainment?
It's hard.
Oh, I'm not saying that's what I want. I just want to know whether we think that's what's happening.
It is
Jake.
really hard for me to see where the Republican Party goes on a national level after this. Any scenario that plays out, I don't see how a certain segment of the Republican Party becomes disenfranchised or very unhappy with the result.
Okay, Susan?
I think we've opened Pandora's box. I mean, we are a reality TV nation. We like the vulgar, we like the crass. And, you know, for right-wing radio, for decades, you've seen lots of personal attacks. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's mean. And I don't really think that anybody's going to turn away from that.
Joe?
The cesspool's open forever. It's going to stink forever.
Oh my gosh. Well, on that happy note,
On that
folks, grab another drink after that.
USA,
I think we just helped everyone's bar tab. Everyone, thank you so much. I'll stick around for a little bit if anyone still wants to talk politics. I don't know if these guys will, but thank you to Joe DeSano and Susan Demas and Jake Neer. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming out tonight. Tomorrow on air at 91.7 here in this area, michiganradio.org, we will have updated polling results, and beginning tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock, NPR live coverage. Don Gagne, homeboy from Detroit, will be on air giving us all the results. You can go to michiganradio.org to find the results. And then Wednesday morning, Jack Lessenberry will be on. Hopefully Rick Pluto will have not so high of a fever, and we'll do an It's Just Politics. And then all throughout Wednesday, you'll have updated coverage on the results. So tune in, and I hope everyone had a good evening. I certainly did. I think the panel did too. Thank you so much.
And one final announcement, again, thanks to the great folks here at Rivers Edge Brewing for inviting us back. Be sure to tip your wait staff for the great service they provided. And I can't help but give you a commercial, since there was a conversation about the commercial media. Again, Michigan Radio is part of the non-commercial media. And it reminds me that a week from this Wednesday is our spring membership drive. So keep that in mind, too. Thank you.